Well, welcome to a very special episode of our podcast. I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, Heather Hayes. It's so great to have you. Usually, we created the podcast by letting people know that we're here to give them a 101 level look at whatever the topic of the day is. Generally, it's a consumer topic of some sort. But the question I've been getting the most of lately, since we had our second son, is how did you do it? What was the surrogacy process like? So I wanted to take time for our listeners to let them know really kind of what we did. And the first thing we did was we sat down and talked with somebody who had the experience. So that's our point today, to be able to do the same. And thank you so much for coming and hosting.
Steve, I'm just thankful that I get to be part of this process with you to share with everybody what you have been through and how you were able to have this amazing family. I'm lucky enough to sit next to you at work.
Sure.
So I can come in every day and say, so what's happening today? Where are we in the process? What's happening? So I think this is great to be able to give folks, especially those who are maybe struggling to grow their family or looking for different options. I think this is fantastic. Or maybe people who are just curious, like me, who asks you a ton of questions. So
and nothing's off limits, let me say. I mean, because look, we're talking about super sensitive stuff. We're talking about money and biology and feelings on, birth termination and contracts and, and it can seem really overwhelming. And it doesn't have to be, because I will say, while it's not a easy process sometimes, it's an incredibly simple process if you just get some advice from somebody who knows what they're talking about.
So just a little insight, nothing about having a baby, no matter how you do it, is an easy process.
Yeah, we're learning that now.
Sometimes
now that we
it's
have
a little
two.
more fun than others, but it's all as long as you can get the family that you want. It's fantastic. So let's get into it. Two beautiful sons.
Thanks. Yeah. Hudson Thomas is our second son, and Jacob Anthony is our firstborn. Jacob's a little over 2 now. Hudson he just turned 5 months.
So as soon as I said two beautiful sons, this smile came over your face. Did you ever think that these boys would be in your life, that you would be a daddy?
I honestly, I'm getting emotional here.
Yeah.
I honestly never thought it would be an option. I mean, look, obviously I'm in a same-sex relationship. My husband and I grew up in the 70s. He will be the first to tell you, him in the later 70s, me in the early 70s. And who would have thought that becoming a dad, especially to a genetically related child, was even an option? So when people say, did you always know you wanted to be a father? The answer is no, because I didn't even realize that I could be one. And now that I am, it's my mind is, you have 2 beautiful daughters. My mind is blown every day.
Well, I want to tell you, just from getting the peek into your fatherhood, your life as being a dad, that I have gotten, you seem to really have it together. Where I come to work crazy every day, you're an amazing dad.
My kids don't talk back yet, so I think I've got a little bit on you at the moment. You've got teenage girls essentially,
yes,
so
preteen.
that's my hat's off to you, my dear.
Well, so let's talk about this. So, found the love of your life, you got married, like everybody hopes to do when they find that someone special, and you say the next step is, we want this family.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
So we did what most people do. First of all, there was the idea of, do we adopt or do we have children via surrogacy? We were pretty specific about, my husband more so than I, that we wanted to have sons. We knew that we wanted to have boys. And once we realized that we could achieve that through surrogacy, because we thought, okay, if we want boys, we have to adopt to guarantee that they'll be boys. And we'll get into it a little bit later. But once we found out that we could do that through surrogacy, we said, okay, maybe this is an option for us. So we did what most people do. We called up the different surrogacy agencies. We started to ask questions. And honestly, first of all, we were incredibly overwhelmed by the cost of it. And kind of the detail of all of it. And what we expected was that we were going to visit with these agencies, and they were going to, in a very welcoming and nurturing kind of way, welcome. And what we found was, in our experience, and this isn't the same for all of them, it was very much here's what it is, here's what it costs, here's when our prices are going up. So if you want to get in, you should get in now. And we were kind of whoa, that's, a little overwhelming. And what we found was, we had lunch with some friends of ours who have children. One of them has children from a marriage, and then they have 2 sons via surrogacy. And we sat down with them for lunch, and we were kind of telling them about our experience thus far. And they said, you can do this on your own. You don't need to use an agency. And we thought, you're kidding. Like, I mean, we're talking about this is the biggest thing we will ever do. It involves lawyers and doctors and biologists and a fiduciary and escrow company. And I mean, how could we possibly pull this off on our own? They said, look, you still have to assemble your team, right? Even if you work with most agencies, you still have to find a doctor and you still have to find a lawyer and you still have to find, an egg donor and all of this other stuff. You're going to be the general contractor, for lack of a better term. And we said, but where are we going to find the surrogate? Because that's where they get you, right? And the agency fees we were looking at were between $20,000 and $25,000, just as the fee, as the administrative agency fee to kind of facilitate the process, which is a lot of money. And they said, okay, watch your reaction, but you're going to find her on Facebook. And I thought, no. I mean, I once bought a couch on Facebook, but like a woman to carry our children there, and they said, go on to this page called Texas Surrogacy, and it's so funny. Oftentimes in my career, people say, what are you still doing in Dallas? We thought you'd be here for a little while. You go home to New York, whatever. And you kind of have that moment in your life where you're like, this is why the universe has put me here. Texas, believe it or not, has some of the most surrogacy-friendly laws in the country, which a lot of people are surprised by. So we joined this Facebook group called Texas Surrogacy. We told our story. And within 24 hours, we had multiple women contact us, many of whom just to say, congratulations on your, this idea that you want to become dads. If you need anything, let us know. And many of whom contacted us and said, I'm interested in being a surrogate. And we were off and running.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you here for a second.
Okay.
You told your story on Facebook. So you did a post on this particular page?
Hi, this is me and my husband. We've been married. We want to have children.
And you identified yourself as Steve Noviello?
Yeah, totally. Because there's a lot of women out of state. Certainly there is that element of, I know who you are, which we're a little bit careful about. But it's a really interesting community. The surrogacy community, first of all, is a very tight-knit group, especially in Texas. Everyone kind of knows everybody, and the outpouring of support that we got from women, some of whom I have still to this day never met, but were constantly there as kind of a guiding light for us, or as an advisor, or hey, what can we, was truly incredible. And we had a kind of a weeding out process. There were kind of 5 things, because one of the things that we learned early on was you just need to be upfront about what you want. I mean, this is like some serious stuff, right? So we said, okay, here's our checklist. You need to be okay with a same-sex couple, because we can't do anything about that. You need to be okay with the idea of carrying twins, because at first we thought, okay, we'd like to try to have twins. You need to be okay with a certain medical protocol that our IVF doctor wanted, which was an injectable progesterone shot, because it makes it easier to monitor levels. We need to have the same views on termination. If something goes terribly wrong here, we want you to know that we would like it to be our decision, and you have to be okay with that. And the other thing, and this was so important for us, because we were going to go indie, as they call it, meaning we're going to be independent of an agency. We wanted to find a woman who had done it before, because we thought somebody should know what the heck is going on during this process.
Because you guys are going into this
blind.
Right.
I mean, we're not even familiar with all the parts. I mean, right? Let's be honest here. We have very limited information going in.
Well, and I have to, as a woman and as somebody who has had 2 children, it is hard for me to understand the love that a woman must have to give you the gift of this family, because I just can't imagine.
Right, being pregnant and then saying,
here's your.
Well,
but it's not her egg.
Right. Yeah. So there's a couple of things. So not her egg, and also, and we wonder this too, because the questions that you have, and I'm sure a lot of people have that are kind of new into this, are, what if she wants to keep the baby? But
that is
the first question. What we immediately found is these women have no interest in having another baby for them. They have a lot of interest in you becoming a parent. Generally, so they have to have had a child before so that you know that they're physically able to have children. And generally, 9 times out of 10, they will be done having their own family. So that's where we started.
So what is the motivation? Is it just truly they want to be able to provide other
I really
families
think
with
it
child?
is. It's very selfless. Look, there's certainly a financial aspect to it, right? So it's like, well, you're going to have a baby and I'm going to have a new kitchen, or whatever you're going to spend the money on. But one of the things that we did is we really removed the money from the equation, and we'll get into that a little more in a little bit. But what we found was that these were truly women who enjoyed being pregnant, were good at being pregnant, for lack of a better term, who had easy pregnancies, and this is what struck us the most about the woman who we worked with twice. They love being parents, and they want you to have that same joy in your life.
How special to be able to find somebody who can give you that.
I will tell you, they're all special. We hit the jackpot with this girl. She, it's funny, one of the things, I'll tell you kind of the chronology here. So we went through the process, right? So now we're kind of vetting these women and, do you have any medical issues or blah, blah, blah. And do we have the same feelings about certain topics? And we came close to signing a contract with this one woman, and you hear the communities, oh, she's a good one. She's got a very sticky uterus, and she's a first-time transfer, because these are badges of honor for these, she's never had a miscarriage, and suddenly she had to move out of state because her son was allergic to some sort of pollen or something, and they moved to the Pacific Northwest. So right before we signed contract, she was like, I gotta go, guys, and we were like, oh. And the feeling that you get, it's not like you're like, okay, well, they didn't have the car in that color, I'll just pick a different color. Now you're like, oh God, now I have to find somebody totally new. What am I going to do? So I went back through all of the emails we had received, and there was this one from Jennifer, who was our surrogate. And she simply, when we first told our story, simply said, hey, it's so nice to see you in here. Congratulations on your decision to start a family. I just did my first journey for another family, which is what they're called, journeys. So I couldn't carry for you, but if I can ever be of help to you, don't hesitate to ask. She just had this really nice energy about her. So I wrote her back and I said, listen, we almost went to contract with somebody. It's not going to work out at the last minute. We're actually not planning on transferring embryos for almost a year. So by that time you might be ready. Do you have any interest at all in a second, in becoming a surrogate again? And she said, I do. I would really love to do that. So we decided we would meet, we exchanged emails back and forth and you kind of feel each other out. And she was very funny and very open, which we really liked. Because even though she's not going to be genetically related to our kids, we just wanted somebody who was kind of in it for the right reasons and who just seemed to be as laid back as we were about the process, because we were a nervous wreck, right? So again, somebody should be in control. So we said, let's meet for lunch. And here are the things that stood out about her. First up, her husband came to the lunch, which was incredibly important to us, that she had great family support. It was immediately clear that her 3 children also were going to know exactly what's going on. She always referred to this process as your baby, your baby, your baby, da, da, da. Never, the baby I'm carrying, never my baby, none of that. It was just we met at it was a Texas landing cattle on the side of the road in Burleson or Bedford or somewhere, because they live out, at the time, they were, I forget where they were, they're in Azle now. So we said, well, let's meet somewhere in the middle. And you're walking into this lunch with these people you've never met, and one of two things is going to happen. It's going to be the most awkward lunch you've ever had, or it's going to be this kind of organic, oh my God, I just met a new friend kind of lunch, during which you will discuss things like, hey, we're 2 gay guys who want to knock up your wife. How do you feel? What's the condition of the uterus? How thick is your lining? How do you feel about, And it was great. We had a wonderful lunch. We met. We had a great time. We both texted each other on the way. It was like a first date. We texted each other on the way home, oh my God, so nice to meet you, all that kind of stuff. And we were off and running. And
you still have a relationship.
We do. And one of the things that they ask you is, what kind of relationship will you have with this person after the kids are born? And she asked us that too. And we said, you know what? We don't know. I don't want to sit here and promise you that we're going to be best of friends and live happily ever after, I don't know. What we can promise you is, at the very least, a Christmas card every year with a picture of this child. And other than that, we just don't know. And she said, okay, I'm down for that. So we had her take out the contract from the last time that she had been a surrogate. We said, well, yeah, take out your contract, make any changes you want to it, and then just send it to us. So at least we're starting with a document with which somebody is familiar. And here's what struck us about her. You would think that a lot of people might add new things to a contract. And she did just the opposite. She went through the contract and crossed out stuff that she was entitled to, but didn't really, like, I don't need an allowance for maternity clothes because I already have them. I've been pregnant 3 times, I have those. So why should you have to give me an allowance for that? Or I don't, some things we insisted on, like there was an allowance for mental health care. And she said, I didn't have any issues. We said, you know what, let it just be there. Also, in kind of a serendipitous moment, the contract had been written by the lawyer that we had hired to represent us. So it was kind of all this very like, okay, all arrows are pointing toward this is going to happen. And, it did. Not easily, but it did.
So you brought up the contract. Let's talk about dollars.
Okay.
And allowances and all these
Sure.
sorts of things. She sounds fantastic, but it's a job. She's getting paid for it.
Yep.
What did she get paid?
She received, her base compensation was, I believe, $25,000 just for carrying the baby. In addition to that, now some people say, okay, every time she has an expense, write it down, submit it to the escrow company. We were like, that's just, we want you to be happy and pregnant and not stressed. So in addition to that, we also gave, I think it was like a $250 monthly allowance. Spend it on whatever. If you're spending it on Tylenol because you're not feeling well, or maternity clothes, whatever, or you're spending it on your kids, I don't care. But like, this is spending money for you so that you don't have anything to worry about.
So how does the $25,000 work with taxes? Do you do that, or she puts that on?
That's a good question. I don't know if she claims it as employment. I kind of don't think that they do. But it's paid over the course of installments. So, first installment at fetal heartbeat, next installment, and then they're kind of monthly until the birth of the baby. Now, in addition to that, that's just her. In addition to that, we have egg retrieval and doctors and the lawyer fees and the pre-birth order and all of this other kind of stuff. So if you're looking at this and thinking, okay, just give me a number, you should be prepared for there to be 6 digits in that number.
So I know that you are blessed in so many ways to have a husband in your life who loves you, to have this family, and to have the finances
the
to
resources.
be able to do this, because I think some people listening might have just said, okay,
right,
what's
that's
another
it, we're
option?
out.
Because it's
well,
a
look,
lot
and
of
there
money.
there are grants and there are programs and there are all sorts of other. I mean, you could do embryo adoption, which would cut down on the contract with the egg donor and the egg. I mean, I think our egg donor, just the fee to donate was $10,000. So that's in addition to the medical procedure that we had to pay for and the medicine to prep her body to produce all of these eggs and all of this, other kind of stuff. So if you are looking to cut expenses, for lack of a better term, which is something, by the way, that I do. We did things like, hey, doctor, I mean, this medicine for egg retrieval is like $1,000. Like, you don't happen to have any samples laying around in the medical cabinet? And our doctor would look and say, as a matter of fact, we do. No problem, no charge. Here you go. We asked questions like that because it is an expensive process.
So where does your health insurance at work fall
Really
into this?
interesting. So that was one of our other things in our non-negotiables. You had to have surrogacy-friendly insurance. So some insurance companies will have a specific exclusion for surrogacy to say, hey, we're not covering any of this. It's not actually your baby, and we're not going to pay for any of it. Her policy did not have that exclusion, which was important. Now, if you're in a situation where you found a surrogate, you can buy them a policy on the open market during open enrollment. So you kind of have to time it perfectly, right? And what you might do is buy them like a bronze plan and then kind of kick it up to a gold plan as they get farther along. But you're looking for something that does not have a surrogacy exclusion in it. Because if you just buy an insurance policy out of the open enrollment plan, it can be incredibly expensive.
So none of this was on your insurance?
Unfortunately, not only was it not on our insurance, but Fox gives us health benefits, one of which is IVF. And we said to Fox, well, hey, we think we should qualify. And they said, well, no, you're not it's not a medical need. And I said, my husband and I were born without a uterus. I mean, I don't know how much more of a medical need could we have. Needless to say, it was a no-go, but we did get paternity leave, which was nice.
So that's a bonus. Great. So what about like the sperm donation? Was that?
What about it? I mean, let's get right to it.
Okay.
Let's roll up our sleeves.
I'm sorry to be about the dollars, but that's just a huge part of it.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
So with the sperm donation, and there are interesting things to talk about there, was that covered by your insurance, or that wasn't covered
I was willing to do that for free.
Okay, so you go in the room, and that's what it is. I mean,
it is. So you abstain for a certain period of time that they say, hey, we think 5 days is whatever it is. You abstain, and then you get a cup, which is a lot larger than it needs to be, and you go into the room, and there are visuals provided for you. In fact, actually, so you go into the room separately, right? Because you have to be in your kind of own sterile environment. And I went into my room and I shut the door. And just as I was locking it, because you're in like a hallway in like a doctor's office, and everyone knows what you're doing. And there are people, I mean, as far
feet.
Right, feet away. And I went to go lock the door, and then there was a knock at the door, and the guy said, I'm so sorry, I just need to switch out the DVDs.
Something that might be a little more appealing.
Something that might be more appealing. And I said, I have an iPhone. I'm good. I don't need any DVDs. I'm good. Although I will say this, I did look in the DVD player to see what the last person watched.
Were you interested at all?
I just was curious. Like, so what did it for you, person before me?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so it's all part of the process.
All part of the process, yes.
The beautiful process that it is. So you do the sperm donation. That's set. That gets set aside. You've got your egg donors.
Yeah, so we found her through our IVF clinic, and what we needed, one of the things that we're looking for, which, by the way, the first thing they told us about egg donation was, we do not have any Harvard PhD comedian supermodels.
Okay,
they don't exist. So these are generally women who, again, whose bodies are great at producing eggs, who maybe have some physical attributes or personality attributes that will hopefully be passed down genetically. But if you're looking for, Heidi Klum, the PhD scientist, it's not happening.
Right.
So what we needed, because we wanted to have children that were genetically related by the egg donor. So our kids both are from the same egg donor, so they're genetically related by their egg donor, but they have different sperm that created them. So because of that, what we were looking for was a high yield donor. We needed somebody who could produce enough eggs. Doug and I thought, well, we want 2 kids, so we need 2 eggs? I mean, that sounded pretty logical to us, and we had no idea that we would need a huge number of eggs. I think during our first egg donation, we got, I think it was more than this, but let's say it was 50 eggs from this woman. So now Doug and I each have 25 to fertilize. And of those, maybe 22 actually fertilize. And of those, maybe 17 actually make it grow to day 3 or day 5 so they can be genetically tested. And of those, maybe, 12 survive the testing. And of those, maybe half of them are genetically normal enough that they wouldn't end in miscarriage. And now we're down to 6 each, and we want boys. So of those 6, maybe 2 are boys, and we found we were very good at making girls. In fact, the first time that we went to transfer, because it took us a few tries, we each, I think out of 50 eggs, we had 1 boy each.
So as a mom of 2 amazing girls, why wouldn't you want
It's actually
girls?
interesting that you asked that.
Because I don't know why I want to be on that sort of...
bothers you.
It does bother me, and I hope that doesn't sound wrong to say.
No, it doesn't. Here's why. And because one of the doctors that we were interviewing in another state that we were looking to do asked me the same thing. He said, I got to be honest with you, and I don't mean to be kind of stereotypical here, but you're 2 gay guys. Wouldn't you want a little girl who you could dress up and take to gymnastics and whatnot? And I said, there was a lot of hesitancy for me to have a son because I am not necessarily inclined in a lot of the very traditional male things. I'm not a throw the football in the yard kind of guy, and would I be a good father to a boy, right? But at the end of the day, I wanted the opportunity. My dad and I have an incredible relationship today. I'm incredibly lucky to have 2 amazing parents. But look, I wasn't what they expected, right? And I think that there's a process by which you have to kind of get over that with parents when you're parenting a gay child. And I wanted the opportunity to be a great father to a son, because our relationship wasn't always, great. It's great today, but it wasn't necessarily always. And that was something that I wanted to do. So we decided to have boys. I think that also administratively, think of it. I'm at the mall. I need to use the restroom. Where's the, that kind of stuff as well. And the other reason that we chose is that we didn't think it would be fair to a girl. We live here in Texas. Our families, especially at the time, don't live here. We don't have any consistent women in our lives, so that when the time comes where there are women things that she needs to have questions about, whatnot, certainly we would be able to offer advice, but we wouldn't be able to offer experience. And that was something that was important to us, that we would never have a lack of experience to share with our kids. So we chose to have boys.
Well, I do have to tell you, you know an awful lot about females
well,
right
now
now
I do.
about this. So I
now
think you
I
would
do.
just do just fine with girls.
You're sweet.
So I'm just going to take this one step further just because I'm curious. This is all manipulated. It's not the right word. But you figured it out. You knew what you wanted. Does God come into this? Does religion come into this? That at some point you go, here's the sperm, here's the egg. God, give us what you want. Or, you know what, I'm going to control this from finding the surrogate to having the baby. And I don't mean control in a bad way.
Right.
I just mean...
Right,
you know
I'm calling the shots.
You've got things to take care of.
Well, I'll tell you this. I and my husband are both certainly spiritual people. I believe in kind of a good, orderly direction of the universe, and if that's what God is, then that's what it is. But as far as a religious aspect, it really never came into play at all. Like, people ask us sometimes, well, what'd you do with the extra embryos? Don't you think that those are viable people? And I'm not going to have 37 children, so I can't possibly, have them all. And what will happen to them one day, I don't know. Maybe they'll be up for adoption. Maybe they'll be donated to science so that people can have a better experience than we did, whatever the case was. No, religion and spirit and God never, ever came into... Now, there were a lot of times I got down on my knees and I prayed.
Sure.
But it was almost like triage prayer, like, please get us through, this hump or this, day or this count or this are we or aren't we pregnant or, that kind of stuff.
Well, and you mentioned that and the praying. And I'm sure there were lots of tears along the way, too, starting with the first woman moving away.
Yeah, sure.
Then, of course, you find Jennifer. But, along the way, there are miscarriage and there are things that happen.
We belong to a really incredible group on Facebook called Men Having Biological Babies, I believe is what it's called. And it's, again, this, one of the best ways to get through this process is to find other people who can say, I know where you are. Let me tell you what happened to me, right? This kind of person helping person, which has been this really great experience for us. But I'll be honest, 9 times out of 10, people share the success stories. They don't share the, it took us 4 tries and 3 surrogates and, whatever else. The first transfer we were supposed to have was January of 2016. And the lab that was going to genetically test the embryos was in DC, and everyone was all set, and our surrogate was all jacked up on the medicine, and her lining was thick, and we were good to go, and we fertilized the eggs, and then 5 days later it was time to test them, and there was an ice storm in DC, and they closed all the airports, and they could not fly the samples overnight to DC to be tested, so they said, we got to call it off. So we had to refreeze everything and then start again. So then we went to February. Okay, now we're gonna have the transfer, and we put in 2 embryos, and we each had a boy, and we were so excited. And here we go, and you're not pregnant. And then in April, what do we do now? Well, now we need more eggs because we're out of boys. So can we buy them? Is there somebody else ahead of us on the list for the same donor? Could we split the cycle with them? And we managed to get another couple of embryos together, and we transfer them, and we're not pregnant again. And the bills are piling up, and the patience is wearing thin. And we went into our doctor and we said, what do we do here? And he said, you know what, Steve, I see a lot of people come through my office. You guys have a really good thing going with this girl. You have a great relationship. You guys are always in here laughing and cutting up. And it's just, we see a lot of people, and it's rare that we see what you have. just try one more time. Let's do it this way. Let's do what's called a fresh transfer. So as opposed to creating embryos and freezing them, let's sync it all up. Let's sync up the egg donor and the surrogate so that she is ready for egg retrieval 5 days before she is ready for the transfer of the embryos. That way nothing's ever frozen. It all goes in fresh, and let's see what happens. And sure enough, I mean, I remember we were said, okay, we're going to do everything different this time. We wear like a little like bee suit, so everything's sterile, because we were in there for the transfer. I mean, and it's an amazing process. The catheter is this like capellini noodle thin thing that, I mean, when you think about how tiny these embryos are, then they put them inside of her and you can see it on the machine, and we were there taking video, and we got the pictures, and they told us to wear green, it'll be lucky, so during our pregnancy with Hudson, I wore the same pair of green underwear to every appointment that we had with him, and luckily and we bought a different kind of pregnancy test this time, and we weren't going to test until 5 days later. And I would call her every day and be like, "Are your boobs sore? Are you tired? Like, is something like da?" And she'd be like, "I think so. And then the day came, and she was getting up at 6 a.m. and she was going to, pee on the stick right first thing in the morning, and we're at our house, and it's 6 o'clock, and it's 6:02, and it's 6:05, and oh my gosh, and it didn't happen, and whatever." And then we got the text, and it was like, it's a life-changing moment. It is a life-changing moment. And she made this little card that she took a picture of the pregnancy, the positive test, and it said, "Shit just got real."
So
and it
sweet.
did. It did.
Do you have the card still?
Oh, I do.
Do you have the stick?
No, I don't have the stick. Well, I think the stick. I don't think that it. I think that it.
No, you can keep the stick. I have our stick.
Oh, look
in
at
the baggie.
Great.
In the bag.
Hoarder. And then we told our families that we were pregnant, and like that was like, because my mom stopped asking. I mean, every time she'd be like, "So, what's anything?" Mm-hmm. No. And that was a decision that we had made. We said, look, if we were straight, we would tell them when we got pregnant. We wouldn't be like, "Hey, we're trying. We tried again last night, didn't work." So we thought, what? Let's just tell them when it's done, because there are so many ups and downs to this process, and how many embryos do we have, and did they fertilize, and is she or isn't she, and how the transfer, And we told them, we were actually on a family vacation, and we told my parents, and it was a great way. We were at a hotel in Florence, which sounds like super bougie, but like, and we had been at like cooking school all day in like the Tuscan hills, and we said, let's just have a cool night in the hotel. And my parents, kind of as a joke, it was a huge family vacation to Italy, and everybody went, and kind of as a joke, they said they made T-shirts for everybody. So we had a onesie made with the same logo. And it said coming, next year, whatever. So we're all sitting in the room, and there's a knock at the door, and it's the concierge. And he says, "Oh, we have a gift for Mr. and Mrs. Noviello." And they said, "Oh," which is not terribly unusual in a fancy hotel. So he comes in, and, "Oh, what could it be?" And we're just, "I don't know, what could it be?" Whatever. We're sitting there, and my mom opens the box, and she looks at it, and her reaction is just, priceless. And we have the video, and I'm gonna add it, and she doesn't have any makeup on, and she's gonna kill me, but the moment is so sweet. She just is just cannot believe that this is actually happening. And when it was all over, my dad, who is very pragmatic, turns to my two nieces, who I think at the time are like, I don't know, 12 and 15 or whatever they were, maybe even younger than that, and he says, "Do you have any questions for your uncles? Because they're two dudes having a baby. So my younger niece says, yeah." And it's like, okay, like what? Here we go. Like what are the questions? She goes, "How did that guy come to the door with the box? I mean, you never even left the room. How did you orchestrate that?" It was like the fact we're two guys having a baby. It it didn't even faze them.
But isn't that great?
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing.
That's a great story.
Yeah,
it really is.
It was an incredible moment. It really was.
Did you follow the rule, and it wasn't so exciting for baby number 2?
No, so
all
actually,
the special goes into baby number 1.
So it's funny. With baby number 2, the surprise was that it was going to be Jennifer again. So after Jacob was born, and again, it was a process. We had specialists and, all of this other kind of stuff. And it was a bit of a process that we used. And it was very nerve wracking, and I was a mess most of the time. And I remember the day that he was born, he was supposed to be born like on a Wednesday, and he decided he was going to come on a Friday. She called us up in the morning. She said, I'm having a little bit of spotting. I don't really know. I'm just going to go to the doctor just to be sure. And we went with her. We said, well, we'll just meet you there. And, we're talking about what we're going to do that weekend. And, we're going to the movies, and we have tickets, and her kids have a soccer game or a baseball, whatever it was. And the doctor was like, oh, no. Like, you're having a baby today, like at lunch today. And we were both like, it was funny. I remember I was looking for a new family car. Like, I was in a loaner car that the dealership had lent me to test drive. It was just the most chaotic day possible after all of this planning and all of this very precise, stuff. And of course, then he was born, and it was like, and remember she said to us, she goes, I've never seen the two of you so quiet. Are you okay? And it's kind of an interesting phenomenon, because after all of that work and after all of the tests and all the tries and so on and so forth, it's like you accomplished the goal, but now the work starts.
Right.
I mean, it's not like, okay, we're done. We did it. Yay. It's like, well, now you have a baby.
Yeah.
And what will that be like? And luckily, and Jacob was such a good baby and is such a great kid and is super, super sweet that, of course, immediately we wanted to have, another child. So we did. We started the process. The second time around, it was a little bit easier. We thought it'd be a little bit cheaper. We had the embryos already, although we ended up having to create some more of them. We were a little bit more familiar. We found a woman out of state who was, again, wonderful. That had its own list of stuff. Now I need a different lawyer because it's in a different state, and what does that look like? And every time she has an appointment, I have to fly her in, and we wanted to fly her in with a guest so she feels comfortable, and so on and so forth. And we had issues with embryo quality and all of this other kind of stuff, and we ended up getting pregnant December of 2017, I guess it would be, and then miscarried in January. And we hadn't told anybody what we were doing. And I remember I was flying home from my grandfather's funeral the same day, and I was a mess. And I was like, oh my God, here we go. Because now it's like, oh, we got to start all over again. And I was on the phone with Jennifer. I was at Love Field, and she said, let's just call my doctor. Let's just call him and ask if I can do it again, because we had thought that he had said, no, you've had too many pregnancies. The lining was a little thin last time. The placenta was not quite where I wanted it to be, whatever, all of that kind of stuff. She said, there's a difference between, hey, we want to, and hey, can we really do this? She goes, let's just call him. And I was like, okay. I said, but let's go to the appointment together. That way there's no well, how did he say it? And sure enough, he walked in the room, he saw us together, and he said, you guys getting the band back together? What's going on? And we were like, can we? And he was like, well, sure, And we said, well, what about this? And he said, no, you were fine last time. We said, well, what about this? He said, no, but we can monitor you for that. And this, and every question, he was like, it's green lights, guys. It's green lights. And I looked at her, and I was like, oh my God, are we
doing
that
this?
lucky? Are we really doing? And I said to her, please go home and just take a minute, because there's a difference between, oh, I would totally do that again for you. And now okay, you can. So what does that look like? And sure enough, we used the same IVF doctor. We used Fort Worth Fertility in Fort Worth, Dr. Rob Kaufman. And our OB was this guy, Dr. Martin Reed, who was amazing. And he said, come back when you're pregnant. And we said, okay, let's start the medication. With the contract is easy this time. We're just our lawyer was David Cole, and he said, guys, I'm just going to change some dates and stuff and some numbers, So other than that, I mean, it'll cost you next to nothing. And we got pregnant on the first time.
That is unbelievable.
First try with Hudson. Yep.
It's so
9 months later, we had a baby.
It amazes me that it was. I mean, you did this a year and a half or so later. You're doing it again. Yeah. Same everything.
Yeah. In fact, it's funny. Jacob, the day he was born, was 1 year to the day of our first failed transfer with her. Yeah, crazy.
And they're growing up.
Fast.
Are they alike? Because same egg donor.
Same surrogate.
Oh, but let's talk about sperm.
Different sperm.
Who's who?
We don't know. So interesting. People ask us that all the time, and we obviously say, well, they're both ours. I mean, of course. But we get it. We get that people are curious. We don't know. We honestly don't know. We said to the doctors, look, whichever one of us do the testing, whichever one of us did not result in Jacob, please use that person's materials for the next baby, because that's that way. We don't want to. And it's interesting because there's sometimes I look at Jacob and I think, okay, clearly you are the spitting image of Doug. And then other times I'm like, but you know what? You've got fingers like I do, or you've got this little piece of your sternum like I do, or whatever, whatever the case is. And then Hudson, I look at him and I'm like, oh my God, you look exactly like me. And then I'll be like, nope, you're totally your father.
So what is on the birth certificate? Does it say?
So those are actually two things I wanted to. So again, Texas, super friendly state. It does. It says parent 1 and parent 2. Okay. And the way that it works here is you do something called a pre-birth order, which is all of the legal stuff before the kids are ever born. And that wasn't always the case. That's relatively new, where our lawyer is able to petition the court to say, this woman, because had we not done that, Jennifer would have gone on the birth certificate, who has no genetic relation, and her husband, who really has no relationship to what's going on here.
Okay, so it's whoever she's married to.
So we were able to petition the court ahead of time to say, these people are saying not our babies, and these are going to be the parents, and that was it.
Who told you to do? And this is why I think
this is why you have a lawyer.
Well, that's right, because that is, I don't know. I guess just being on that Facebook page would help with people saying, don't forget, do this.
Well, and look, and there's a lot of, and I'm still pretty active on that page because I think there's an opportunity for service there for the people who are saying, hey, our best friend is going to do this. We're such good friends. Like, do we really need the lawyer? Like, and it's like, yes, you do.
You do.
You need a lawyer. You need, because you're dealing with hormones and not only hers, yours.
Of course.
Your emotions and money and things that just ruin relationships when they don't need to be.
And your family's giving advice and information as helpful as they're trying to be. Did Jennifer nurse the babies?
In the hospital she did, and then she did some pumping. But I don't know that she was either good at it or enjoyed it or whatever it was. So actually one of our colleagues, so Melinda Thomas, who had a baby 2 months before Jacob was born, she produces milk like a dairy cow. I mean, she's so little. She's so tiny.
Fantastic.
So she donated a ton of milk to us when he was first born. And then with Hudson, we nursed him in the hospital, and then we went to the milk bank, which is like buying drugs.
Is it expensive?
Well, A, it's expensive, and B, you're like, really sure. No, it's very, it's very clinical. But you're like, hey, how much you got today? How much you need? Like, I don't know, a 20 bag? Like, what do you, I got 100. Okay, could you break it up into 20s for me? Or milliliters, very, very strange thing. But I will say this, you asked about telling our parents the second time.
Yes.
So my parents came into town, as they do now. By the way, now that we have children, they're here once a month.
Of course.
Every month. They stay with us, which they'd never done before. They're always here. My mother-in-law moved to Texas, so she's incredibly supportive and an incredible part of her family. And I do want to say I recognize how special that is. Not every same-sex couple has that experience, and I'm really, truly grateful that we do. So my parents were in town, and I said, oh, why don't we, and actually Jennifer and I had just come from an appointment, and I said, watch this. I said, I'm going to post on Facebook about having lunch with you, and I guarantee my dad is going to say, well, I better be invited next time. So I posted, sure enough, immediately. I said, oh, well, why don't we all have dinner together? And, oh, great. Blah. And then my mom said, well, why don't I cook? I'll make, chicken parmesan and these big Italian meal. And they'll come to the house, whatever. And we were like, wonderful, sounds great. So they're thinking this whole dinner is their idea. And we come, and we had left a gift outside the house so that when she came, she kind of grabbed it. And it was a T-shirt that said, I'm being promoted to Big Brother. Oh. So when we were sitting there, she gave us this, I brought this gift for Jacob. And I said, oh my God, look what it says. And I turned around, and my parents looked at it, and they were like, what? And Doug's mom was there too, which was so special. And then there was this kind of awkward, okay. I said, it's Jennifer. She's pregnant again. And they were like, what? Oh my God. I mean, they just couldn't believe it. And my dad said to me in the kitchen, he goes, I got to tell you, he goes, I mean, we're obviously excited. He goes, but I thought to myself, this poor freaking girl. I mean, what you're having her tell us that some other woman's pregnant with your baby? So she said, no, it's her again. And none of us thought that would ever be possible. And it worked out in the best possible way.
How special for her to be there for that.
Oh, 100%.
So she's very clearly still part of your lives.
Of course. I mean, we were just in New York City together. I played tour guide with them for 4 days. I had to go up to officiate a wedding of a cousin of mine. And they wanted to go to the city. I said, well, go when I'm going, and I'll hang out with you for a few days, and we'll tour you around. And I mean, her and I mean, we went from we can probably send you a Christmas card once a year with a picture to we text every day. say about
Right.
like whatever. I'm going next week to speak to her daughter's journalism class at Azle High School.
So this will continue. She's a part of the family.
I think that she is. It will continue for as long as friendships continue, which I hope is forever.
So
And honestly, for us, the real icing on the cake is that when the day comes where our children start asking questions,
Yes.
we will be able to say to both of them, this is the woman who did this for us. This is the angel in our lives, And it's just, when we had that miscarriage with trying to have our second baby, and it was like a punch in the gut, and I thought, oh my God. And Doug looked at me and he said, there's something better coming. And I was like, you go, screw it. How is that possible? And he was right, as he usually is, this could not have worked out better if we had written it ourselves. And we're so thankful, not only to her, but to the many, many, many people, again, many of whom I've never even met, who gave us advice along the way. And we're so free with their experience and their vulnerability to be able to say, here's how you do it, And honestly, and I really do truly mean it. Since that, I've had many guys that I've been on Facebook, and I'll say, here's my number, give me a call, and we'll go through the whole thing. Here's what you do. It's not as overwhelming as you think that it is. And if you really want to have a baby this way, it's completely possible to do it. And it's incredible. We were there from the moment those embryos were transferred into her, all the way through all of the process, and the moment those kids were born. I remember when Jacob was born, and they lifted him out of her, and of course he came out like a Hollywood baby, not a tear in his eye, and they put him on the warmer. And I remember the first thing I noticed was, and I don't know if you remember this with your kids, he had really long fingernails, which is something you don't know unless you're in that situation. And I said, wow. And the doctor said, well, he's been growing them for 9 months. So and they said, you can touch him. He's yours. And it was like, can we? Won't he melt? He's brand new. He just came out, And it was like, oh my God, you are our son. And I'll tell you, one of the greatest parts about being a dad for me is watching somebody who I love so much love kids that we have together so much. Doug is an amazing, amazing, amazing dad. And sure, look, I would be lying if I said, oh, it's just been great and it's craft projects and, feedings and Instagram moments. These kids scream, and sometimes Jacob throws himself on the floor, because I served blueberries in a red cup instead of a blue cup, or, whatever the case is. And, there are times where we're both tired, and right now Hudson's not sleeping through the night unless you hold his hand, and, we're exhausted, and we're both 25 pounds heavier than we were when we first, whatever the case is, but we're dads. And I honestly, had you told me in my 20s that this is where I would be in my 40s, I would have never believed you.
Where are you going to be in your 50s?
I don't know. Probably a lot grayer. Hopefully not too much heavier, but hopefully a lot grayer as we now start to figure out things like school and what do we do, and all that kind of stuff. And look, we don't have a lot of contemporaries that have children, and we went through that process of what will life be like, and will we be boring, and it's like, look, we still go to brunch occasionally. We just have kids with us now. We still go on vacations. We still do all of that kind of stuff, and there was that moment, though, where you think, we have a really great life. What if we do this and it's not great anymore? And I think that for us, our experience, and I hope it's the same for everybody, is that this is so next level stuff that you can't even imagine. We have a dog. We know what it's like to love something, right? It's not even, what I mean? Not even close.
It is not the same. And there are so many couples out there who are trying to have children, and I think the information that you have is invaluable to be able to share that with everybody.
And there are some great resources for people. So look, if you're thinking about the process, I would definitely recommend, and again, I know we were like, what, Facebook, really? Texas Surrogacy on Facebook. These are incredible women, incredible IPs or intended parents who are there.
I want to ask you, before you get off of that, is that a closed group? Because I don't want negativity in there. And do you know, so what if, can other people see that, or only people who are in?
I think that you join, you maybe asked to, I honestly, it was so long ago. Okay. And trust me, if you're in there for the wrong reasons, they'll throw you out.
They boot you out.
This is a incredible community of people whose hearts and minds are in the right place. So that's a great one. Men Having Biological Babies on Facebook is another great group. They also have conferences around the country and around the world to go to, because again, we would have never been able to do this without the kindness and information that we got for free from strangers.
I just thank you, Steve, for sharing so much with me at work. When I'm like, so what's happening now? Never thought we would talk about some of the things that we have talked about over the years, but we have, and it's so insightful. I think we all take a different path, whatever that path is, to our families. And whether we are blessed with having children or not, we are just in this together, and it's all of us sharing information with one another to figure out how to do it.
I appreciate you being here.
Steve, thank you.
Yep.